Colder
capital,
there.
the capital region of Canada.
Oh, very nice. I feel bad for complaining about how cold it's been in Texas with you here.
No, I understand. If you're used to one form of or one type of climate, to have it
Yes,
change, it's a drastic change.
so
And for
true.
us, we've had pretty a warm winter, and then all of a sudden it got real cold.
Yeah,
So and lots of snow. Yeah,
that's awesome.
so that's okay.
It'll do that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. How many people join the meetings every month usually? Do you know?
I don't.
Yeah, so sorry, I was unmuted talking to myself. Welcome. Yeah, we usually have a handful of women. It really kind of varies. And so I'm excited. So we did this last year, and I was thinking, I know this is something really needed in the birth community. What could we do? Um, and I was just thinking, what inspires me is a lot of you other women. And so I would love to share, I gotta let people in and try to multitask, but is to share how other women are doing birth work as ministry, so that it's not just me sharing how I've done it. And so that made me think of Abby. And so let me figure this out and change some views real quick on my end. Um, but I just want to share a little bit for you who do not know me. I need a person to like push, like let people in. So
A button pusher.
yes, a button pusher. So I am Shanna Bradley. I am the founder of Global Birth Community. We have a Christian doula training program where we teach and train ladies locally through our nonprofit that work with refugees and immigrants and provide doula services, childbirth education. So we have a local ministry, and then we train virtually in the US and overseas. We're about to go to the Philippines in March and train up 30 plus midwives, nurses, future doulas. So we're super excited about that trip coming up. But I just have such a heart and passion for missions and birth work, and the Lord is just like combine those together in a lot of different ways. And it's hard to find like-minded women in this field sometimes. I just thought everyone would be a Christian in birth work, because like this is God's work. Like it's a miracle every time. Like everyone's got to feel the same way, right? And the more I've been in it, the more it's less and less that I can find like-minded women. And so as I train up more doulas, I'm like, these women don't have people that are like-minded around them. So how do we fix that? And so I wanted to start building a community. And so that's kind of where we're at. And then this year I'm like, let's have more women share about how they do it, and how that looks different. If you don't have a nonprofit ministry, if you don't go international, how can you do that in the everyday? And Abby is a great example of that. So I will turn it over to Abby and let her tell you. I'm in Indiana, by the way. And so we have a bigger group than normal, but if you want to put in the chat your name and where you're from, that would be awesome. And it's not as cold as Canada. I heard you say that. Indiana's not as cold as Canada, but it's colder than Abby in Texas. So go ahead, put your name in the chat, where you're at. And yeah, go ahead, Abby.
All right, awesome. Well, I just want to say like how honored I am to be a part. I mean, even just looking at your faces, like I love finding other women who are also just care, and it's just so amazing to see. And y'all are my heroes already just for showing up. I started my birth worker journey 7 years ago when I started my own business. I called it Voices of Eve. And I knew very early on that I wanted it to be a ministry based business. And I did a lot of debating in that first year. Do you make it a nonprofit? Do you serve only low income? Do you serve low income, occasionally? And ultimately, I swayed away from nonprofit because I wanted to be able to answer God's leading in the moment. I didn't want to have to go to a board and be like, am I allowed to do this for this person? Stuff like that. So kind of like the downsides of that is that you have less support. Of the whole purpose of having a board for a nonprofit, of course, is to have people to do the fundraising for you. people who have hold you accountable and stuff like that, which is so awesome and definitely has all of the pluses that come with that. But the way I chose to do it was to kind of let me and God just work it out as we go. And that is what the next 7 years proceeded to be like. I don't think any year looked exactly like the previous or the following. Every year was a little bit different. And that fit my personality really well because I get bored if things get too mundane. And so I guess that really worked for me. And since then I've, kind of I feel like it was a constant learning journey. Like every birth, I'd be like, okay, I need to make this adjustment. Every interview was like, okay, now we're going to do this. And figuring out how to do it was something that I felt like I was a continual journey on, and probably still could learn so much more and adjust it as I go. One thing that really kind of struck me when I first started out, because, being a brand new doula, I'd never been in doula groups. And depending on how long you guys have been doulas, you probably have a good sense, or not good sense yet, about how doula groups can be amazingly supportive, or they can knock you at your knees and drop you on the floor and leave you there. And it's kind of like every group, I guess, on Facebook. And that completely caught me off guard. I was not prepared for that. I made a post very early on in one of my groups saying, hey, I want to help low-income families with birth work. And I was attacked immediately. The nicest thing that was said was that my business would fail and I wouldn't be able to survive. And the rudest thing was that I was undermining other business women and taking income from them, which never made any sense to me, because I'm like, if these families can't afford doula care, how am I stealing your customers by offering lower cost services? So, it is what it is. But what I found was the exact opposite. Not only, now I will be honest, I did not get rich doing doula work, but really very few of us do anyway. But what I found was that God was just a constant provision in my work. And I will never forget that very first time that I had a client pay all of her package all at once. And it was like $650 or something. And she paid me at the birth. So she had like saved her whole pregnancy and wanted to make one lump payment instead of paying me a little bit here and there, which was totally fine. I always gave my clients the option. It's like, you can pay, a little bit or all at once. And that very same week, so her fee was like $650. And that very same week, a part on my car broke that was $627. So it was just like, I didn't know to save $650. I didn't know that was coming, but God did. And he knew that he could line me up with that client who would be able to make that payment. So what ended up happening is that I was able to trust more in my creator than I ever knew I could possibly trust him. And every time a client came across my computer and, they needed help, even if I didn't have the clients yet that would pay a little bit more to help cover what I would have to discount this client, I knew they would. And after, some time doing that with God, we got into this rhythm where like, I was like, okay, God, we'll do this because I know you're going to take care of whatever gaps are going to be here. And those gaps were not always provided in my income. Sometimes it was my husband getting a tip at an event that he hosted at the church. And, like whenever he was running sound or something, they'd be like, here's an extra couple of $100. And it's like, well, great, because we were down a couple $100. So that works awesome. Sometimes it would be, a photography client, and sometimes it would be someone buying stuff on my Etsy store. So, but I wouldn't trade that season of my life for anything, because it created an intimacy between me and God that I just didn't even know could be before. And, of course, there were things that were hard, like the first time that a client, didn't pay me what she was supposed to. She ended up making like one payment and then blocking me on Facebook and not responding to any texts or emails. Like that happens. It happens to doulas who ask for full price as well. The sad thing that's been for me is that the 3 clients that have always done that were all Christians, or, Christians. They go to church. And they all didn't qualify for as much of a discount because they made more money, honestly, than I did. So it wasn't my low income mamas that ended up stealing from me. It was the clients who actually had means to make their payments and chose not to. My low income mamas, those are the ones that are like sending me I think the lowest payment I ever got was $10. She's like, all I got's $10 right now. I was like, that's fine. You send me this $10 right now and everything's going to be fine. And one time I had a client who called me and she was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I was in a little bit of a fender bender, just got out of the ER. We are fine, baby's fine, but I wanted to let you know so that you'd be aware because I'm supposed to let you know when stuff happens. I was like, I'm so glad you let me know. I'll be praying for you as you like, the next few days if you start to get sore or whatever. And I asked her if she could go to a chiropractor. And she said, well, I had $100 set aside to pay you this month, and that's all the extra money I have. I said, I would like it if you would put that $100 and invest it in a chiropractor, and then you can just pay me the next time you have $100. And my husband was like in the kitchen while I was talking to her, so he overheard it. And I hung up the phone with her and I said, how much you want to bet that somebody else is going to make $100 payment this week? That became our new game, is like, how do we think God's going to provide for this? And within the hour, I got a $150 payment from a different client. So it just becomes this like kind of fun game, just like, how's God going to provide now? What's he going to do? And so, yeah, like it's, I would love to, I know that, I think Shayna said that we were going to have like a question time at the end. But like, if there's any, like, if you guys need me to pause or anything or clarify or anything, just let me know. I tend to ramble because you guys know this is our favorite thing to talk about is birth work. So I could do it for probably 5 hours and not get tired. But yeah. So yeah, Shayna, was there anything specific you wanted me to share about my birth work, or just keep going like I'm going?
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about how you got here? So how you got into birth work, and you know God, you know how God works in ministry because you were raised that way too. So just a little bit about kind of what got you. I love what you wrote about, like, this brought me to this point, and this woman brought me to this point, and this woman brought me to this point. But just a little bit about how you got into birth work, and then maybe a little bit more about how you, what that looks like when you're working with different levels of economics, and then some of that heartbreak of like how those women don't follow through sometimes, and it's not necessarily the ones that you would think, and just yeah, just how you've walked through that.
Okay, cool. Well, I love to tell the story of how I got into birth work because I was raised as a missionary kid in Kenya, Africa. And I lived there from the time I was 9 until I was 19 when I returned to the States to go to college. And when I was about 13 years old, we knew a family. We had given the husband some odd jobs to do around our property. We generally would do that when we lived there. It kind of helped us out so we, could focus more on our ministry and less on the stuff that needed to be done around the house. And it gave someone else an income. And his wife was told while she was very, very pregnant, was told by her mother-in-law that she was getting too big and the baby was growing too big. And if she didn't do something, the baby would be too big to be born and the baby would die. Which is funny, not funny that is a rumor that is spread not just in the United States, but across the world. And this sweet mama, trying to do the best to care for her baby, stopped eating in an attempt to keep him from growing too big. And she didn't eat for 3 days. Her baby passed away in the womb. And then she had to have a C-section at a very primitive hospital. The doctor actually accidentally cut her bladder while he was performing the C-section. And so she was not able to attend her own baby's funeral because she was still had a catheter in. And it was just a whole lot of things. And this family had been coming to a Bible study that my parents had been doing. Their entire family is Muslim, and they were the only people who were exploring Christianity. And when my mom was there with the husband helping out with the funeral arrangements, and she overheard his family saying that they wanted to bury the baby facing towards Mecca, which is traditional in Muslim culture. And he said, no, this baby is a Christian, so we are not going to bury him facing towards Mecca. And my mom just burst into tears. And he looked at her and he said, it's okay, Mama. God is going to make this okay too. And so, sorry, I always cry when I tell that story. So that became my kind of like, because I remember my mom telling me that story at 13 years old. And I was like, all they needed was information and this baby would have lived. Like, that's all that was needed. And so I was like, I want to help women someday learn about pregnancy and know what to do. And I had no idea what that job was, but in my head at 13 years old, I was describing a doula. And so I went through like lots of different phases in my life trying to find what a doula was. And it started out in college. I was working towards a women's ministry counseling degree, which I didn't end up finishing because I got married and moved to another state and just never picked it back up again. But when I got pregnant with my first child, that was the first time that I heard the word doula. And I remember I was watching the documentary A Business of Being Born when I heard the word for the first time. And I watched a doula rescue a mother from a C-section by sharing information with her. And that just like stuck in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But, just information was able to save them from a C-section. And then by the time my baby was born, I was like, oh, that's not how I pictured birth going from all the research that I did. And I had a midwife too, but I couldn't afford a doula. So whenever I started my birth journey a couple years later, when I was pregnant with my second child, I knew that I wanted to help moms like me so there isn't a roadmap for how to do it. And so a lot of it was trial and error. At first, I priced way too. I think this might not have been the right price range for this family. And so then that turned into a lot of research about like what.
Hey, Abby, can you hear me?
Is moving. So I just want to make sure. So just give me the thumbs up if you can still hear me, I guess.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Did I cut out for a little bit?
Yes. So
Okay.
through trial and error.
Okay, good. Y'all didn't miss much then. So yeah, through trial and error. I remember one time I was at a birth where I had like done a very big discount for this family, and they were sitting around talking about their trip to Disneyland they had taken the previous year. And I was like, I don't think I priced this one right. So it definitely took some figuring out. I actually did work on, and I will share it with Shayna so that she can share it with you guys, is I created a calculator tool to help you if you decide to offer any discounts. This tool can kind of help you navigate that. One thing I always say is that you do have to make sure that you're caring for your needs, calculate what you need to absolutely survive. Like, obviously you don't want to be losing so much money that the subscriptions you have to pay for and your gas and stuff like that are not being covered. You have to cover that, and then how to like work up from there. And then, I honestly leaned a lot into the Holy Spirit whenever I was reading, and I had a section in my contact form where people could share why they felt like they needed a discount. And sometimes on paper, the numbers say this person can afford this doula care. Other times it's like on paper, it looks good, but what they've got going on means something else. And you just kind of have to take those as they come. I remember one of the discounted clients I had, they had enough money at the time, but what they were planning on doing, the next step they needed to take in their life was going to require every little bit of their savings. And it was to help rescue, it was a blended family. And so the father's children were with an abusive mother, and they had to pay for court fees to try to get those children into their home where they were safe. And it was a complicated situation because she was an emotionally abusive mother, not a physically abusive mother. And those can be even harder because there's not enough evidence on these sweet children's lives. And so, with working with the Holy Spirit, I can kind of like, navigate like, God is, I know that technically they make enough money, but should I offer them a discount so that I can be there for them and do what I need to do? And it ended up being exactly where I needed to be. And honestly, like, I have no regrets for any discount that I have ever offered. Even if it was like I was describing this previous story where their mom was sharing the Disneyland story. Even her, the time that I had talking to her, it was amazing to see that during pregnancy, she was like, meh, Jesus, I guess, like I believe in him, but I don't do anything with it. And she was in an abusive relationship with her husband. And then fast forward to now, she is slowly working on getting into a regular relationship with Jesus and going to church. And so even if I had nothing to do with that, getting to watch her over the last 5 years now and being able to pray for her is something that I'm very grateful for. So I don't view any mistake as a real mistake, because then it's a divine appointing. God put these people's paths over each other. And if there's some reason, you just have to figure out what that reason is. So, and as far as practical side, because it took time to develop my relationship with the finances and with God, to put him fully in charge. That took a lot of time. And so what the mindset I have now is not necessarily what it was in year one. And I do think it's important in year one or day one to make sure that you are accounting for what your family's needs are. Especially if this is like a main source of income. My husband, for the most part, has made the majority of the income, and mine has been like filling in the gaps for where his income didn't quite meet what we needed. But some people's situation are more like a 50-50 situation. Some people are leaving a job to do this work. And it might be something that you have to ease into, where you start out where you're doing all full cost clients, but one of them is a low income family. And then you can navigate, okay, well, now I can increase to maybe once a quarter or once a month, or, however many. And then you can kind of build into there, especially if you're planning on doing fundraising. One thing that I was slowly working on incorporating before I had to step out of my doula work was a legacy fund. So creating a way where after a client receives help, you can give them the opportunity to help pass that along. And I had many clients do that unofficially. Like if their bill was $725, they round it to $750 and say, just keep the change, basically pass it along to the next client. And one payment of $25 doesn't make a huge difference, but if every other client does it, it can get you almost to the point where you're paying for one whole birth all by itself. And then I found that people gave things to me, like if it wasn't a financial donation, it might have been a physical one. Like I have hardly ever had to buy anything for like little client gifts, because all those things have been donated to me. I've had lubricant donated to me, breastfeeding samples, breastfeeding pads, stuff like that, little things that I could put into a little bag. It's like, thank you for hiring me as your doula, where most doulas have to account that into their costs. So the things that make you financially able to afford to help out a person here and there or full time might not necessarily be a financial donation so much as it's other things. God always finds a way. And one of the amazing benefits that I found of doing birth work as a ministry is that it didn't just impact the clients that I had. I cannot tell you how many people I have helped, literally can't, because I would have people at my church saying, hey, I heard you help low-income families. I have a cousin's sister who's having this hard situation and she doesn't know what to do. Like, oh, I'll just send my workbook to her for free, or to you to give her for free, a little something to help her out and give her like a starting ground. Family members who had someone at their church who lost a baby and they wanted to know if they could send me their number, and I've been texting or calling with them, or if they're local, I've sat and had coffee with them. So just having the label of ministry and serving low-income families on me has created this atmosphere where people are like, Abby likes to help women, and I have a woman who needs help. Let me just see if Abby has something. And, I, so many times where, I had just an opening in my schedule. Like I remember one time I got reached out for a family who their baby had trisomy 13 and was not expected to live very long after birth. And so they reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for a photographer to capture some memories at this birth. And I literally was not supposed to be available that week, because I had like 2 clients due that week, but they had some had delivered early and one was like now expected to go late. And there was this beautiful little opening in my schedule that wasn't supposed to be there. And then they walked right into it. And I was like, yep, that's why God opened that little space. It's just for you. And so, yeah, so there are so many ways that I have seen God provide where I couldn't, and see things coming that I couldn't. And even like right down to in July of last year, my father sustained a stroke at the end of July and was in the ICU for 5 days, in the hospital for 15, and in rehab for another 2 weeks after that. And he has made so much progress in his recovery. He still walks pretty slow. His vision is slightly double. He says, like, if I hold my head like this way, there's just one of you. And so he's still working on recovering, and he lives with us full time so that we can help him. And a month after his stroke, my mother lost her battle to stage 4 breast cancer, and she passed away with me and my husband and both brothers and all of her grandchildren all around her. And it was an incredible experience, to say the least. And so when my father was still in the hospital and my mom was still severely sick with cancer, I had to make a very hard decision because I had 6 clients coming up. And I had to be like, okay, I've got 6 mamas who are due. They're depending on me, and I am not capable of being depended on by anybody except for my father and my mother. And so I reached out to my close-knit doula community, and they all had room to take all of them. So my 3 best doula friends rallied together and had enough room. And literally, you know, they're both hardworking, hustling doulas. Like, them having room was not a small thing, that God did for me to make some room for my sweet mamas. And so I didn't have to worry about any of them. And I fully stepped out of doula work. And that was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life because I was like, God, I have been working towards this since I was 13 years old. And I really feel like I'm finally getting good at it, you know, which is probably not good for anybody. Like, you know, you're not good at it yet, but I was like, really, like, I had fallen in love with my ministry, and I poured so much sweat, blood, and tears into her. And God has turned that grief into losing that business and having to set it aside into a brand new direction for my birth work. And it has been incredible to see that God was preparing me for this too, because I took over. My parents still were missionaries in Africa, and they have a ministry to a village in Kenya. And it's so funny that only doulas understand, because when I say that my mom was a doula to regular people, they're like, oh, she watched babies be born? And I was like, no. She walked alongside people. She made space for people. She provided resources to people. She was a doula in her own way. And so I have taken up her work to the families in Africa and coordinate medical needs, coordinate financial needs, educational needs, food needs. And coming up, hopefully in the next couple of months, if we can get all our ducks in a row, I'm going to be going to Kenya for about 8 to 10 week trip. And we'll be working on the ground and hopefully improving, or beginning the journey of improving birth in that village. My parents discovered a couple years ago that the cerebral palsy rate in babies in our village is extremely high. Like, it's 0.3% or something. Like, it's outrageous. And my mom was telling me this, and she said that they had the public official come to the village and say, oh, we know that your rates are too high, and we're going to try to figure out what it is. And I was like, Mom, I know what it is. Like, I've not been there, but I know what causes cerebral palsy. And these aren't C-section cerebral palsy babies like we see in America. These are vaginal delivery cerebral palsy, which more likely than not, especially when it's a lot of them, like one can be a fluke, but a lot of them is abuse from a care provider, not knowing how to help these babies be born, probably not following through with proper procedure, manipulating baby to roughly out of the womb, something. Like, this is not something that is caused from their diet or a lack of education or anything like that. This is not these mothers' fault. This is a care provider problem. So I'm going to hopefully begin the journey into fine tuning, like finding exactly what is going on and then working on improving that. So, and my mom was telling me one day, she was like, well, nobody's allowed to go with these mothers into the delivery room. And I was like, I've had that problem before. I can get into that delivery room. Like, this, my work has trained me for this. Sorry, I have an alarm going off and I don't know why. So yeah, so it's very exciting to see where God's going to take every little thing that I've learned. Even my social media training, on the job social media training as a birth worker, you know, constantly having to make Facebook posts to stay relevant. I'm going to be applying, I have been applying that to my parents' ministry. And you know, I'm still, Voices of Eve is not gone forever. She's just sitting on a shelf for now until God tells me what to do with her. But for now, Akira Ministries has become my new passion, and it's the only thing that could possibly make me survive losing my passion and my love, and finding new passion and new love in this ministry is God, because I trust me, I miss my work. I miss being a doula. I miss being at birth, but I'm excited to see how God's going to change it and make it super awesome. So, was that all the things, Shayna? I'm so bad. I'm like,
Yeah,
I feel like
no,
there's a
thank you
third
so
thing
much
I'm missing.
for sharing all of that. And yeah, it's been a journey watching it. And someone asked how we met, and we really just met through either like a Christian Facebook group, or
Yeah,
the Lord brings me all kinds of people, and you'll see that if you keep coming to these meetings. And
I'm sure.
most of the women on this call I don't even know yet. But like, we've taken 3 trips now overseas with teams of people that I've never met to places I've never been, and
Awesome.
the Lord just orchestrates it, and you do learn to trust in a way that, you know, you don't in any other capacity. But I guess a couple things that came to my mind that might be questions, but um how did you kind of find that balance in birth work and ministry, since it can be really draining when you don't have ideal clients? And how did you ever say no?
Oh, that's a really good question. I didn't even think about that. Yes. Um, so kind of like, so first of all, like, I feel like the balance was definitely fine-tuned by God. Because I remember saying to my husband not long before my dad's stroke, I'm like, I'm not getting very many low income inquiries lately. Like, I feel like they've all been just regular price clients. And I was actually like frustrated by that, because I was like, that's not what I'm about. I'm here to help people. And all these like full cost clients keep coming my way. And then turns out that's exactly what was supposed to be happening, because God was preparing. He's like, financially, you're going to need this little bit of buffer zone. And then also, all my close knit of doula friends, all of them, they are all strong Christians, but none of them serve low income families. So it would have been much harder on them to take on a drastically reduced client. But instead, I think there was only one of them that had a reduced fee, and it wasn't by much. Like, it was just 10% or something like that. So me being able to pay them the cost that they can more, or is closer to what they charge their clients, was a huge blessing that I didn't even know that I needed. And you know, like, those clients were hired, let's see, if my dad's stroke, well, the last one was due in January. So she would have, you know, 9 months from there, like, it was well before my dad's stroke. And even while my mom was still doing pretty well physically, like, she was still months away from passing. So there was no way I could have been like, I'm gonna need this. So, but did you ever say no? I would say that because I never made public what my discounts were. So those were always something that I kept on my side. I just off said there, you can qualify for up to 10 to 45% off, is just what it says on my website. And so there were times when a client reached out that on paper they qualified for like, you know, maybe like 30% off or something like that, but just something didn't sit right. And I was like, you know, I think I'm going to offer them 10% off. And so even though on paper this is what their discount technically was, that's what I ended up doing. And that always seemed to be exactly right. And truthfully, I had a very good hire rate. For the people that actually interviewed with me, I think the people that hired me was anywhere from, I calculated it one time, it was such a long time ago. So it probably was like 90 to 95% higher rate. which is really good for like, and that's people that I had a phone call with. That doesn't count the people that reached out to my website, because you know people send out 20 emails to doulas and then just pick 3 of them and go. But the people that actually listen to me and listen to my story, most of them hired. And so I do remember one time that I should have said no, and I didn't. And we did the phone interview, and I could just tell that her heart was not, I don't know, you know what it is when you talk to someone, you're like, I don't think you're a very nice person. And so, but she really needed the help. She ended up qualifying for all 45% off. And just really, I just didn't feel right during the phone call. And this was very early on in my doula career. This was probably, I don't know, my 15th or 20th client, which is just nothing. And I ended up going to her house, and like looking at the house, I was like, this is a really nice house. Like, you say that you don't only make such and such, but this is a really nice house. But you know, of course, by then it's like I feel like the contract's already signed. We're already in for this. So this is what we decided to do. And she was the client that ended up, she didn't call me into her birth. That was the strangest part. Like, she told me she was at the hospital. I said, okay, let me know when you're ready for me. Gave her some suggestions of things to do, and she just never called me in. I kept checking in every few hours. She stopped responding at a certain point, had a C-section, and then never spoke to me ever again. And I still to this day, like, she's my biggest mystery. I'm like, what happened? Like, I want to know. But then I found out a couple of years later, actually, somebody called me and was like, hey, do you know such and such? And I was like, yes, I do. And she was like, she like scammed me out of some money. And she had mentioned at some point that you were her first doula. And I was like, well, I guess if you could count, you know, not being called in as her doula, yeah, I guess I was. And so it just turns out that this is like something that she habitually did. And so I really should have listened to that like gut saying something's off here. And so then I learned from there. It's like, you know, whenever your gut triggers you, you know, you gotta be honest about it. And sometimes that might be a hard conversation of just like, hey, something's telling me that I need to do something different. And, you know, and hopefully that gut feeling has happened before contracts are signed or even estimates are sent or whatever. But always listen to that gut. God communicates through it very well.
Can you think of examples of how you feel that birth work is a battleground? Do you feel like Satan would come and attack that? Have you seen how Satan does not like birth and life being brought forth, and that you walking alongside these women and sharing the gospel through action and words, that Satan shows up and says, hey, Abby and your Abby's family, I don't like this. Like, do you feel that? Have you seen that? Have you experienced that? And what does that kind of look like for you?
So stinking much. And it would be like so many little things. But you know, sometimes you walk into, like, you know, when you walk into that like perfect birth space where this like the candles are already lit, the birth tub is like full, and you just feel so warm and fuzzy all over, and you're like, let's do this. That's how I would feel in those like moments, even at a hospital where everything's going crazy. That would be like, but you'd still feel that. That's like, man, this is the Holy Spirit. This is like this is just such comfort and peace. And then when you walk into that birth, the opposite side, when you walk into that birth and it's like the care provider screaming at the mom, and you know the dad's asleep on the couch, it's just like everything is awful, that like yucky, like what is happening to this woman feeling. Like I would have that so many times. And sometimes it would be in a beautiful birth, I would have that yucky feeling. And in a horrendous, like crazy birth, I would have the beautiful feeling. I mean, some of the most peaceful and like calm, you know, like my hands aren't shaking. I know what to say. I've got energy. Some of those moments when I'm like, I feel on my game, we're at a birth where the baby was already passed in the womb, and like we knew that we were delivering an angel baby, like, you know, stuff like that. And then other times it's like everything is going great, everything should be awesome, and it's just not. Why is it not? Why do I feel off? I wish I could think of a specific example. There's a birth center in our area. And I know we have someone from Fort Worth on our, so I don't know if she knows or not, but I saw it in the list. But there's a birth center in our area that it's run by Christian owners, but I don't agree with them entirely in some of their practices. They are definitely leaning further and further away from a godly mindset. And you can see it in the little things. Like a client coming in, I had a client come in at 7 centimeters, doing beautifully, contractions 2 minutes apart. She had one high blood pressure reading, and the midwives were like, oh, your blood pressure's too high and you're not really in labor, so we got to send you to the hospital. And sent her to the hospital, and she delivered her baby on her hands and knees on the floor in the hospital, like an hour and a half later. Like, she was doing amazing, but she didn't fit what they like to see in their clients. She was overweight, and she wasn't social media savvy, and they just love the super cute, super skinny social media moms, and different things. But I don't want to get too much into that. But even like in a Christian birth center, I have had this, just like, I feel like I need to pray the whole time and just ask for God to move. And I remember there's a company, and I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the name of it, but there's a company that will pay doulas to help low-income families. It's a non-Christian company. And so you're supposed to, it's like got an app, and you kind of press start when you're working with them. And then when you step out of the room or something like that, you press pause, and then it calculates the minutes that you were actually working with the client. And then it pays you a certain amount per minute or something like that. So basically the parents, they qualify for it, and then they match you with a doula in the area. But I never signed up for them because they required that you not pray on the clock. So you're supposed to, like, when you pray, you're supposed to pause. And I was like, no, I can't do that because I'm praying constantly. So I would be like pausing every like 10 seconds or something like that. So I definitely started to notice a difference in how I operated, not necessarily the difference in birth itself, but in how I handled myself and how I did my part when I would park outside of the birth center, hospital, or client's house, whatever, turn off the car and say a very short, sweet, God, help me with this. Help me do all the things I'm supposed to do. Help me see where you're working around me. You know, I didn't have a script. It was just whatever came to mind. And I noticed a difference in how I approached my work. And I will share an amazing story. It's my favorite story. If this is the only great story I got from BIrthwork, it was all worth it. But right when I moved to Texas, one of my very first clients, she hired me, and I met her and her husband at a coffee shop. Husband was like checked out. He was like, I don't even know why I'm here. And we've all seen that dad, right? And the mom and I were chit-chatting and doing our thing. And she said, yeah, we don't go to church. My husband actually doesn't believe in God, but I believe in him. And I want to take my kids to church because I think, it encourages good morals and stuff like that. And I was like, that sounds great. Yeah. In the first birth of their baby, the husband actually fell asleep on the couch while she was pushing and was just completely checked out of the whole process. And I was like, God, what? This is crazy. She delivered her baby at the birth center, and then I got a year and a half. It was very quick. A year and a half later, I got called to be her doula again. And a year and a half later, she is like on fire for God. Like, she was just so involved in church and just having such a great time. Husband still wasn't saved, but she was like, I'm working on him. And I was like, you'll get him there, girl. And so like we actually became like really good friends, and we talk all the time. And so that birth, he was about the same as the first birth, just kind of like checked out, but he didn't fall asleep during pushing this time. So that's good. Right? But anyway, so then fast forward a year and a half later, I'm her doula again. This time her husband is saved. They both go to church all the time, and they have 3 beautiful babies. And she literally, like, everybody should follow her on TikTok and Facebook because she is just so encouraging and powerful. And the story of her witnessing to her husband was, he woke her up in the middle of the night and said, babe, I think I'm having a heart attack. And she's like, oh crap, and calls 911. And his father had died at a similar age as him from a heart attack. So he was like on alert for it, basically. Team came, and his symptoms had subsided, and they were like, listen, you're not having a heart attack right now, but you should get checked out as soon as possible. And he like the ambulance left and he was like, babe, do you know where the wills are? Do you know where the life insurance policies are? And we're just like going through all the things. And she was like, I am not worried about me and the kids. Like, we are going to be just fine. But I am worried about you. And he said, well, I've been listening to the things you've been saying, and my mind has actually been kind of wondering if I do believe it too. And she like that morning, so this was like in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, she drove him to the church and he sat and cried his eyes out for 2 hours with the preacher, and accepted Jesus as a savior. And now they're all going to heaven, all 5 of them. And I do not take any credit for that. Bethany saved her family, but I do love that I get to be a part of that journey, and that I prayed for it. Cause I remember when she was telling me in that coffee shop, like, yeah, we'll see, we might take our kids to church. I'm like, God, please. Like, I just went right into prayer mode. And I got a great friend out of it. So yeah. Yeah. I definitely don't want to lose time for questions, because I definitely want to.
Yeah. I think you kind of answered everything that I was thinking, and I wanted to ask, you know, how you integrate ministry, but you did that like lovely. Like, oh, I love that story. And so yeah, I want to open it up to questions and answers. So if you can come on to video and like ask your question. If you want, you can text it, you can type it into if you.
Who's from West Virginia? Jessica? My husband's from West Virginia. That's where I lived before I went to Texas.
So. Oh, Jessica's so sweet. You should
go Mountaineers.
Jessica's awesome. So yeah, guys, open it up for Q&A. A lot of you, again, are super new, and I don't know where you all stand as far as birth work and ministry. And so here, this is your chance. I want you to ask your questions, be encouraged. And that was so encouraging. So I'm thankful that you guys are all here. And then, yeah, so ask away. Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. I don't bite.
I have a question, Abby.
Yes.
What is maybe physical or spiritual, but what's the skill you feel like you've used the most at births as a doula?
I mean, besides hip squeezes.
Okay.
Definitely spinning babies. Well, I don't know, man. Now I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna pick 2 then. Spinning babies for sure, especially sideline releases. I have seen those do wonders. Like when you're just like when in doubt, sideline release, I feel like. But also I really got turned on a couple of years ago to frankincense oil. I had always used lavender oil for anxiety and making the room feel calm. And then I started researching more about frankincense oil, and I was like, you know, it really seems to hit different. And I had this mom who I was her doula for the 3rd home birth, 5th birth for her. And she called me and she was like, my contractions are still like all over the place, but my emotions are crazy and I'm just panicking and I think I need you even though I'm not really in labor. And I was like, yeah, remember, that's my rule. You don't call me when the contractions are perfect. You call me when you feel like you need me. So I got there and she was like, guys, she was the dream. She was like, she'd feel the contraction coming and she'd take a deep breath in and go, I can do this. My body was made for this. God is good. Oh, like just the whole contraction. She was like coaching herself and then telling me she was like panicking and losing her mind. But I like rubbed some frankincense oil on her chest, right on that vagus nerve. And I was like, remember, like, you've got this. Let's take some deep breaths, do sideline releases. We did 1 on each side because that's all she could take. And then her baby was born on the floor less than an hour later, like 15 minutes after the midwife got there. So yeah, like frankincense and sideline release, favorites.
Thank you. Awesome.
Out of curiosity, is everybody like, are we mostly new doulas or mostly seasoned doulas?
I think we also have midwives. We have some doula photographers. We have
nice. So it's not just doulas.
Some student midwives. Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing. Oh, and there's more people in here than I thought. I didn't know you could scroll. Hi, everybody. I thought there was only 5 people here this whole time.
But we have 20, we had at least 25 plus. So
that's awesome. Very good crowd. Good job, Shannon. gosh, I feel like every birth, like a nurse or a midwife or a chiropractor, let's see
And
who
childbirth
else.
educators. That's right. Sorry.
Oh yeah, childbirth educators, yeah, photographers. Like I have
Yeah.
learned something from all of them. Um, even even one time I learned from a anesthesiologist that they aren't all awful. Some of them are lovely. I'm so biased. I'm sorry. Do you advertise yourself as a Christian doula or let it come up naturally in conversation? That is a very good question. I would say that I'm in the middle, because if you go to my website, I mean, Christians have an accent basically. Like we have a way of speaking, like using the word blessing and stuff like that. And, I remember one time that I actually somebody asked me, are there any Christians who don't say they're a Christian on their website? And I was like, well, I mean, I don't say I am a Christian doula, so I guess I fall into that category. I mean, you can guess, figure it out. And someone's like, you claim to be in ministry, so that means you're like, that's obviously Christian. And I was like, I didn't know, I'm sorry. So it was just so funny what people get mad about. But I will say that the majority of my my clients are Christians. Not something I have done. It's just, again, the language just appeals to Christian clients. The ones that I have had have actually been, or the non-Christian clients that I have been a very good experience for me, I would say, especially the last non-Christian client I had. They were like, hey, Christians just believe this and we just don't believe that. And I'm like, see, it shouldn't be something we get mad at each other about. And it was like really hard. Like that first prenatal visit, I was like, don't bring up Jesus too much. Don't bring him up too little. Like don't try not to think about it. Just listen to the Holy Spirit, because I didn't want to beat him over the head with it. But there were some times, where they ask a question and it's just like, God, sorry, that's the only answer. So, yeah. I'm just checking to make sure that I haven't missed any questions in the comments over here.
Okay, hello, hi, I'm Christina.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm so excited to be here. So I have 4 kids, and I feel like during the winter they are like sick a lot. And then we homeschool, but then we go to church, and like everybody from different schools, and any school that has it, and they get together at church, and then all of their class has it in church. So how do you balance that? And like what do you do if you have a cold? Like, do you go to a birth, or like, just give me your wisdom, girl?
Yeah, no, listen, that's one of my favorite questions. And there's so many times where I'm like, can these school kids keep their germs to themselves? Like, this homeschool mom's just trying to survive, y'all. But so the times that I have gone sick to a birth myself, now, of course, I've never gone like feverish, vomiting, stuff like that. What I usually do is when I have a client saying, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm like, okay, awesome. I want to let you know where I'm at. Had a fever 48 hours ago, haven't had a fever since. I still have a cough, runny nose, but I don't think I'm symptomatic. But if you want me to find back up, I will. And because I live in Texas, like I don't know what it is other places, Texans don't give a crap. Like they're very like conservative Republican type people, and they're like, we don't care, just come on. So
I have friends from Texas, and they they were the youth pastors at the church we went to, and they're like, we don't care. And I'm like, okay, we're good.
When my mom was like, they came back, let's see, they were in Africa during the beginning of the pandemic and came back, I would say sometime in 2021. And they were like, are we gonna have to wear masks to church and stuff like that? I'm like, Mom, nobody in this church would want you to wear a mask. They won't fuss at you if you do, but they don't want you to wear a mask. So yeah, when I'm myself sick, I just kind of give that little preview and let them decide whatever they're comfortable with. And then of course, obviously, if I'm so sick that I'm not comfortable coming, I'm like, I will fall over dead. And that's the other thing that I forgot to mention, that literally, so y'all are not going to believe me, but I swear I'm telling the truth. 7 years of birth work, I never called in a backup.
Wow.
Not once. Until my father had a stroke, and then I had find backup doulas
Mhm.
for 6 clients. But before that, never had to do it. It always worked out just perfectly. And now just like, I remember there was one week where I had 3 babies born in 63 hours, I think it was. And let me tell you, like this girl barely made it. But technically, I had prayed for it because my best friend had had her baby a month early, and I was supposed to be in Georgia to be her doula. But because she came a month early, I had to wait till my clients were done having their babies before I could go down and meet her. So I was like, God, can you make these babies just like come all in one week? And he did. So, yeah. Now, when my kids are sick, this is the other funny thing is that when my husband and I got married, he was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be a stay-at-home wife. That's what I want to do. And then cut to a few years later, I was like, can I work a job where I'm going to leave at random times for who knows how long, and you get to be alone with the kids? So anyway, my husband, it was a huge learning curve for him because I was the stay-at-home mom, and then suddenly I started birth work when, started going to births whenever my youngest was probably 6 months old, and my oldest would have been 4. And so it was just kind of like, here you go, Dad. And the first couple of times were not fabulous. I did have to have a talk with him and be like, listen, babe, you can't order, go get McDonald's for lunch and Chinese food for dinner every time I'm at a birth, because we're going to start losing money, especially because I'm low income. And I remember the first time I came home from a birth, and he had, I walked in to the smell of food cooking, and I was like, he cooked dinner. I'm going to tell him what a good job he's done and just build him up. I walked into that kitchen and I was like, how's everything going? Not lying. He was like, well, that's burned. That doesn't even taste good. And I don't know where the children are. And he walked out of the kitchen. I was like, okay. So, but he's gotten much better now. But I don't remember actually being at a birth when my kids were sick, except for one time. And it was just like one, those runny noses that last forever. So she wasn't sick. I don't know what I would have done, honestly, if they were super, super, super sick. I mean, if like, just like a fever and a cough, I probably wouldn't worry too much about that. But if they were like, vomiting and diarrhea, or, like going crazy, I probably might have found a backup, just because nobody does it like mama. But ultimately, I think that that's like something that you decide birth by birth basis. Like maybe have yourself a general, like if my kid's arm is broken, I call in a backup, and just kind of set you a ceiling, and then leave yourself wiggle room for everything that falls underneath. Because, sometimes a kid will be sick and it won't look bad, and then it turns bad. And then also vice versa, where they're like, it looks like they are sick, and it just, oh, it's just a bug, and it's over 6 hours later. And then you're like, well, so yeah, set yourself a bar and then wiggle room underneath to kind of listen to the Holy Spirit.
What other questions do you guys have for Abby?
I'm sad I missed Nikki Simpson from Fort Worth, the certified nurse midwife. And I will send the calculator tool. I actually hoped that I'd be able to find it on my laptop and pop it in the comments, but I didn't see it immediately. So I don't know. I'll have to dig around and try to find it in my documents.
And we will send a follow-up email too that has, we have a group on the website that you can join just to be able to network with everyone, because we were trying to figure this out last year and not everyone has Facebook or social media. So there is a Facebook group too that we just started, but there's also one on the website that's like more private. So they're both private, but you'll send an email and we'll put that in that email as well.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. Well, and you just made me remember an easy place to find it. So I think I'm actually going to be able to pop it into the comments too, but I'll also send it to you so that you can send it out as well. But I just remembered a group that I posted it in, so I'll be able to find that.
Well, I want to take prayer requests as well from you ladies. So if you have a prayer request, we'll make a list of them, but I want to pray for them. And then I want to come around Abby and pray for her tonight. I was hoping we could get it done in under an hour, but we're women, right? So if you have to go, I understand, but I do want to pray for you ladies, and I want to pray for Abby. And and the way that the Lord is directing her new ministry and just watching over her and her family. As like I said, Satan doesn't love what we're doing. So please either say it or write it in the chat if you have prayer requests, because we want to be praying for each other.
And I did so I got the sliding scale in the comments, and I also did my Voices of Eve website and my current ministry website in case anybody wants to check anything out. What I did to my Voices of Eve website is I just made it a resource pool. So I just kind of put a bunch of free stuff on there. So y'all feel free to use all of that stuff. It blesses me to know that it's helping. So, and I will be uploading even more free stuff that I just haven't had time to do at some point. So, so yeah, feel free to explore around there.
Along the lines of what Abby was saying, I have a bunch of births, I think 6. So normally I take one birth every like 4 to 6 weeks because we have the nonprofit. I train doulas. We have 6 kids. There's a whole lot of things going on. So the Lord would bring me and it kind of evened out about 1 birth a month. I have 6 births between now and March 1st that are due. And it just happened. And then right after that, we are going to the Philippines. And so between now and then, it's just crazy. And I want to be there for these women. And so just pray that the Lord brings them one at a time. And again, I live in Indiana, and like it was sleety, icy today. I don't do well with bad roads. And so why the Lord sent me so many women in February, I will never understand. But he's definitely stretching me and trusting in this time going to the Philippines between now and then, because yeah, I don't know how it's going to work out. So.
What an interesting time, Denise, to be in that transitionary of like mommying full time to like,
Oh.
Who knows what? Like, that's exciting. What a canvas.
How else can we be praying for you, ladies?
Our family, so living in Delaware, it can be difficult for us to find biblical community. And my husband's been kind of following this guy. His name's John Lovell, and he's author of The Warrior Poet Way. It's really great. Like all husbands should read The Warrior Poet Way. But he's just started preaching in a church in Rome, Georgia. And we are actually planning to go and visit Rome because we were asking the Lord, like, Lord, what is like, where do you want us? Where do you want us to be? And actually my area, like the crime and stuff is getting really bad. A lot because of the policies that are being passed. And we were actually like personally involved in some things that were difficult. So we felt like the Lord's like kind of nudging us places, and we're like, Lord, do you want us to go to, it's actually Rome, Georgia is where his church is. I'm not kidding. I opened my Bible up because I read 1 chapter a day before I get out of bed. And the chapter that I opened to, the head of it said, plan to visit Rome. I'm like, Lord, okay. Because I said, Lord, you need to tell me like if this is something you want us to do. And that was the heading of the chapter. And I was like, okay, looks like we're going to Rome, Georgia. So we're planning on going this month. But there's so many logistics that need to fall into place for us to do that. So if you guys could be praying for guidance and just to make it so obvious. And well, he made it pretty obvious that we need to go, but just, figuring out the logistics of it, because we're going to go and visit his church. So
When you're down there, you should go to Clarkston.
Clarkston.
It's not too far. That's where the immigrant and refugee community is. So put that on the list.
All right, we'll do. Clarkston. Thank you.
Yes. Praying for Jessica and the recent anemia diagnosis. She is a student midwife in Virginia. Yeah. She's been working so hard to get her apprenticeship and do this work, and she's got a lot on her plate. So yes, for Jessica. Anybody else? Awesome. Let me pray for you, ladies. Dear Father, I just thank you for tonight. I just thank you for the way you brought all these women together. I just thank you for each and every one of them and how you use them to witness through actions and through words, and just to share your love with the women and the families that they serve. I just thank you for bringing them here to hear Abby and her story, and thank you for her and everything that she's done in the lives of the families that she served, and that she'll continue to serve. I pray for her and her father as they continue the legacy of their family in Kenya, and be with her family as they get the funding and everything in order to be able to go to Kenya for 8+ weeks, Lord. I just pray that you are in every detail of that and every step of the way, and that you can just show her very clearly how to change birth in that community to bring you glory, Father. I thank you for her and the way she's inspired so many, and how she's shared your love year after year, time after time, and given so much of herself in all the work that she does. I pray that you can just continue to soften her heart to what you have for her next, Lord, and continue to prepare her for that in every little way, as well as her husband and her kids and her father. I pray for Christina and their travels to Rome, and just for clear guidance and wisdom. I know that they've been on just a journey of faith lately, of where do you want them? Where can they best serve you, Father? So I pray that you continue to show them where you want them to be and what it is that you want them to do. And thank you for her heart for BIrthwork In Ministry, and how she keeps bringing more like-minded women to this ministry and sharing that with others. I pray for the clients that you've brought to me, Lord, and that you can help me to just share who you are in each one of those births, as most of them do not know who you are, Father, and that I can make it to every single birth and make everyone feel loved and special and have the birth that you have planned for them. I just thank you for this group of women. I pray that you go before them, go next to them, be surrounded as they continue to work with families and do ministry for your name. Amen. Thank you, ladies.
Amen.
So hopefully we'll have all those resources, and we'll send out an email to you in the next few days. And hopefully you guys will join us next month. We're going to have
Yes.
a doula who's really pioneering doula work in the Philippines. There's 14 million people in Manila alone, and there's about 20 doulas. And she has mentored and raised up most of those doulas herself. And now her husband now has come alongside her ministry, and they do birth work together. He doesn't go to births, but they teach childbirth ed, and they get the men involved in a way that's never been done, especially in their Asian culture. So I'm excited to have them share with you guys next month as well. So we will have a different person each month. And if you have somebody in mind who's really inspired you, like Abby's inspired me, let me know and I'll reach out to them. Yeah, I'm excited to see Jasmine too. Hey, Jasmine. So yeah, let me know if you ladies have any questions, and I hope to connect with all of you who I don't know yet. So, all right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was a blast. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Abby. Ladies, have a good night.
Christina, this is Shelby. She is going to the Philippines.
Oh, yeah.
She
Hi,
drove from
Christina.
Kansas City to Fort Wayne to take my doula training. She gets the prize for the longest travel. And
Commitment.
now she's going
Yeah.
to the Philippines with us. So I'm so excited. Christina has been around for a while. She's my big cheerleader. So
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's so lovely to meet you, ladies. I'm just
Oh,
a
it's so
big
nice
road
to meet you.
tripper.
yeah, she says she's a road tripper. Now I'm taking her across the world. So this is your first trip, right?
No biggie.
Yeah.
Shelby? Yeah.
Yeah. It's my first trip with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I've been overseas
Okay.
across the pond. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Oh, and did I